Hello and welcome to my reality Jeep life with me, the Vermont Jeepgirl, and today we will be installing an Aussie Locker in my rear Dana 35 off of my 97 Cherokee. If you can install a set of brakes, you can install an Aussie Locker. The Aussie Locker is the most relied on differential on the market today. Trusted by off-road enthusiasts to get their vehicle in and out of every possible situation, the Aussie Locker delivers performance. The thru automatic locker, a simple design with no actions required by the driver to actuate the locking capability. There are no cables, no electrical wires, no air lines, no pneumatic or external connections of any kind required. Your new Aussie Locker comes with a detailed set of instructions, a pair of axle gears, spacers, cam gears, a new center pin, and a set of springs and pins, along with an Aussie Locker decal. All parts are made in America with 100% American-made steel. You do not need to remove your axle and bring it into your living room to rebuild. You can install the Aussie Locker while it's still inside your rig. So what we're going to do first is we're going to get rid of the cover. Now I have already drained all the gear oil out and cleaned the inside out. I did bring it inside for demonstration purposes only. Okay, before we begin, we need to remove our spider gears that are on the inside of our carrier. And in order to do that, we are going to remove the bolt that holds the center pin in, which that is going to be a 1/4 inch wrench. You can now slide the center pin out of your carrier. With the center pin out, these gears now will move around freely, which I just dropped some in the bottom of the case. We'll take the side ones out. Now if we push our axle in a little bit, we can remove the C-clip that holds it in place. To do that, I'm going to use a small magnet so she doesn't fall down into the bottom of the case. Pull our axle out. With the axle pushed out of the way and the C-clip off, I can now pull out the side gears. With our spider gears removed and our axles out of the way, we now have our carrier, which is a nice open space for our Aussie Locker to be installed. Our first step that we are going to do right now is we are going to take some grease and we're going to apply it to our axle gear and our thrust washers. And just a thin coat. What we are going to do is we need to take some measurements first. Thin layer of grease. And onto our spacer. The grease will hold it in place while we take our measurements. First one in. Now with both our axle gears and our thrust washers held in, I'm going to take our center pin, slide it in here, now with both my axle gears in place with the thrust washers, I am going to take my screwdriver and I'm just going to give it a little squeeze to make sure that the grease is squished flat. Now with my axle gears, my spacers, and my thrust washers in place and my center pin, I am now ready to check the tolerances in between the center pin and the spacers. And I am right at 18 thousandths. I am within the tolerances that I need, which is between 6 and 20 thousandths. And what we're going to do right now is we're ready to move on to the next step. I will be removing the center pin again, and we will start to install the cam gears. Going to put some grease on my C-clip, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to push my axle in while holding on to the axle gear. I'm pushing my axle in and I'm going to install my C-clip gently going to push it back out so it's tight. And I am going to now install the rest of my pieces of my Aussie Locker. I'm going to put a layer of grease on the teeth of the cam gear. Now that I put a little bit of grease on my cam gear, I am going to install one of the pins. And then the other pin on the other side. When we go to install our pins, be sure that the nipple part that's sticking out is going to be going in towards the teeth. Going to take my cam gear, all pre-greased, find the flat edges, and we're going to slide it in over. Going to use this tool that we made out of a hanger. And I'm going to slide the spacer over the axle, over the C-clip. And that is in place. Okay, with our grease now on our other cam gear, we are going to slide it in here. It's going to fit snug. Take my hammer and gently tap it in. Okay. Now with the cam gear and the teeth in place, what I'm going to do is rotate this around. With the other cam gear now in place, I am going to take this tool that we made. I know this is probably difficult to see, I'll try to get my big fingers out of the way. With this tool, what I'm doing is I slid the spacer that was inside this cam gear so that now it is half inside here and half inside the other cam gear. So this will not fall down now. What I'm going to do with the space is I'm going to push my axle in to where I can see where my next C-clip is going to fall into place. And there it is there. It's all lined up. Put a little bit of grease on this guy here. For this one, I'm going to use my magnet so that I can guide it into place. Making sure that that C-clip is now seated. I can now take my tool and I can push that spacer back over that C-clip like it's on. There it goes. Okay. With the spacer properly lined up now, I have a direct hole for my center pin to fit in. What we're going to do right now is we're going to slide the pin over into the opposite cam gear. There is a hole down in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the tool that I made underneath to guide it into the hole with my screwdriver. Line this hole up. And now it's set about halfway into the other cam gear. Now you want to make sure that the top of the pin that has the nipple on top is exposed now. What we are going to do is we are going to install the spring on top of that pin where that nipple is. And that bigger screwdriver here, to hold that down in there. Put that spring in there. Make sure that it's in straight. We're going to rotate this axle around to the next pin and do the same thing. With that pin set in place, we will then install this spring, resting the bottom on top of there, taking our screwdriver. That spring is in place. We will rotate the axle. This one's already installed. And we'll go on to the last one. There is 4 altogether. As you can see, as I rotate this around, all 4 pins and springs are now locked into place. Now that my pins and my springs are installed into my cam gears, I am going to take my digital caliper, zero it out first. I am going to measure the space between my two cam gears. And I am looking at 173 thousandths. I am within my range that I need to be. I need to be between 160 thousandths to 183 thousandths. What I'm going to do is I'm going to record that number onto my instructions that I got from Aussie Locker. And I am ready now to move on to the next step. Now that we've measured our tolerances between our cam gears, our final step is to install the center pin. So what I have right now is my carrier lined up with the Aussie Locker, and I am going to slide this in here, rotate it around. I'm going to put just a drop of Loctite on my center pin bolt. It's just something I like to do. Now with our center pin securely in place, we are now ready to go reinstall the axle housing back out into my Cherokee, and we will perform the final test, which is the spin test. I will fill her up with some gear oil, put her cover back on, and then she'll be ready to hit the trails.
Hold it backwards, I'll go forward.
Yep.
Okay, I'll hold it backwards, you go forward.
Okay.
The Aussie Locker is safe off-road and on. Unlike manual lockers, which do not provide differential action when locked and severely hamper steering and directional maneuverability, the Aussie Locker's smooth and sensitive operation allows differential action, resulting in uncompromised steering, uphill or down, soft or hard surfaces. Even on highway driving, the Aussie Locker does not impede performance.